Harper Anderson nearly dropped her phone when she saw the email. Elite party planner needed for high-profile engagement dinner. The message was from Zach Thornton, her old college roommate's brother, and one of the most sought-after architects in the city. Harper's small event planning business had been struggling for months, and this opportunity could change everything. 6 weeks to plan the perfect engagement celebration for Marcus and Vanessa, she whispered to herself, already mentally calculating timelines and budgets. She'd met Marcus a few times through Zach, a friendly, down-to-earth guy who apparently had found the love of his life. This could be her big break, the showcase event that would put Anderson Events on the map. Harper quickly typed her acceptance, already knowing she would rearrange her entire schedule for this. What she didn't know was that this engagement dinner would bring an unexpected change to her own love life. 2 days later, Harper sat in an upscale cafe, notebook open, waiting for Zach to arrive. She'd spent the previous evening researching the latest engagement dinner trends and coming up with creative concepts. When he finally walked in, she waved and smiled. "Harper." "It's been too long," Zach said, giving her a quick hug before sitting down. "Thanks for taking this on. Marcus and Vanessa are over the moon that you're available." "I'm excited to help," Harper replied, trying to sound professional despite her nervousness. "Tell me everything about what they're looking for." As Zach launched into details about the couple's preferences, Harper carefully took notes. Apparently, Marcus wanted something elegant but not stuffy, while Vanessa preferred a romantic setting with personal touches. "There's one more thing," Zach mentioned casually. "Marcus's best friend from college will be heavily involved. He's the best man and insists on contributing to the planning. His name is Yates Osborne." Harper nodded, jotting down the name. "That's fine. I can coordinate with him too." "Great," Zach said, looking slightly uncomfortable. He can be a bit intense about things, very detail-oriented." Harper raised an eyebrow. "I can handle detail-oriented. What does Mr. Osborne do for a living?" "He's in the shipping industry," Zach replied vaguely, checking his watch. "Listen, I've got to run to a meeting, but I'll connect you two by email today." Later that evening, while going through potential venues on her laptop, Harper received the introduction email from Zach. She quickly scanned it, noting that this Yates Osborne had already replied with a formal greeting and a request for a meeting the following day. Harper responded with professional courtesy, suggesting they meet at her office, really just a converted space in her apartment that she'd decorated to look presentable for clients. She didn't have the budget for a proper office yet, but she was determined to make a good impression. The next morning, Harper awoke to another email from Yates Osborne, requesting they meet at his office instead. The address he provided was in one of the most prestigious buildings downtown. Harper frowned. The shipping industry must be lucrative, she thought. At precisely 2:00 p.m., Harper found herself in the lobby of the Horizon Tower, smoothing her navy blue pencil skirt and checking her reflection in the glass doors. The receptionist directed her to the 42nd floor, and as the elevator climbed, Harper's curiosity about Marcus's friend grew. The doors opened directly into an impressive reception area bearing the logo Osborne International Shipping. A sleek sign on the wall proclaimed it as the premier global logistics and shipping enterprise. Harper's eyes widened as she realized this wasn't just some small shipping company. "Miss Anderson," a professional-looking assistant approached her. "Mr. Osborne will see you now." Harper was led through a series of corridors until they reached massive double doors. The assistant knocked briefly before opening them, and Harper stepped into what could only be described as the most impressive office she had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a panoramic view of the city, and at a large desk of polished wood stood a tall man with his back to her, talking on the phone. His posture exuded authority, his broad shoulders perfectly fitted in what was clearly a custom suit. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone before turning around. Harper nearly gasped. Yates Osborne was younger than she'd expected, probably in his early 30s, with striking features, dark hair, and the most penetrating gray eyes she had ever seen. His expression was serious, almost severe, until he smiled and extended his hand. "Miss Anderson, I presume." "Yates Osborne." Harper took his hand, feeling a strange flutter in her chest at the contact. "Harper Anderson, thank you for meeting with me, Mr. Osborne." "Yates, please," he replied, gesturing toward a seating area near the windows. "Would you like something to drink? Coffee?" "Tea." "Coffee would be wonderful," Harper said, trying to appear composed while she mentally recalibrated her understanding of who she was dealing with. This wasn't just some friend helping with an engagement party. This man clearly ran a massive company. As they settled into the sleek leather chairs, Harper couldn't help but notice how Yates seemed to command the space around him. His movements were precise, deliberate. "So, Zach tells me you're the best event planner in the city," Yates said, studying her with those intense eyes. Harper smiled confidently, despite her racing heart. "I'm certainly the most dedicated, and I understand this engagement dinner is important to you. Marcus has been my best friend since college. He stood by me during the most challenging time of my life," Yates replied, his expression softening slightly. "When my father died unexpectedly and I had to take over the company at 25, Marcus was there every step of the way. This dinner needs to be perfect." Harper nodded, intrigued by this glimpse into his life. She opened her portfolio and began to outline her initial ideas. "I've selected 3 potential venues that match what Zach described as their preferences. Each offers different advantages." As she spoke, she could feel Yates's eyes on her, analyzing everything she said. It was unnerving, yet somehow exhilarating. "The guest list will be around 60 people," he interjected. "Intimate by our usual standards, but Marcus and Vanessa want their closest friends and family only." "Our usual standards?" Harper questioned. Yates's mouth curved slightly. "Osborne International hosts several major corporate events annually. Our New Year's gala typically accommodates 500 guests." "I see," Harper replied, making a note. "And what about the budget for this engagement dinner?" "That's not a concern," Yates said dismissively. "What matters is creating a memorable experience for Marcus and Vanessa." Harper took a deep breath. "With all due respect, Mr. Osborne, Yates, a budget is always a concern in proper event planning. Even if the ceiling is high, we need parameters to work within." For a moment, Yates seemed surprised by her directness, then a genuine smile spread across his face. "You're absolutely right, Miss Anderson. I apologize for being vague." He named a figure that nearly made Harper's eyes bulge, but she maintained her professional composure. "That's generous," she managed to say. "Now about the theme and direction." They spent the next hour discussing possibilities, with Harper presenting ideas and Yates offering constructive feedback. Despite his initially intimidating demeanor, Harper found him to be thoughtful and insightful, if extremely particular. "I'd like to see the venues personally," Yates said as their meeting concluded. "Perhaps we could visit them together tomorrow." Harper nodded, checking her schedule. "I can arrange that. I'll contact the venues and set up appointments." As she gathered her materials, she caught Yates watching her with an unreadable expression. "Is there something else?" she asked. "Just wondering how you ended up planning events," he said. "Zach mentioned you studied international business in college." Harper smiled. "I did. I worked in corporate consulting for 3 years before realizing I was miserable. Planning my sister's wedding showed me what I really loved doing, creating perfect moments for people." She paused, feeling suddenly self-conscious under his gaze. "What about you? Was shipping always your passion?" Something flickered in his eyes, amusement perhaps. "Not initially, but you'd be surprised how fascinating global logistics can be." He escorted her to the elevator. "I'll have my assistant send a car for you tomorrow, 10 a.m. "That won't be necessary," Harper said quickly. "I can meet you at the first venue." Yates raised an eyebrow. "I insist. It's more efficient." Before Harper could protest further, the elevator arrived. As the doors closed between them, she caught one last glimpse of those intense gray eyes and felt a strange sensation in her chest, like standing at the edge of something dangerous, yet irresistibly compelling. The next morning, Harper was ready precisely at 10, wearing a professional burgundy dress that she hoped struck the right balance between businesslike and stylish. When the sleek black car pulled up outside her apartment building, she wasn't entirely surprised to see Yates himself in the back seat rather than just a driver. "Good morning," he said as she slid in beside him. "I hope you don't mind, but I thought we could discuss the venues on the way." Harper nodded, trying to ignore how the confined space of the luxury car made her acutely aware of his presence, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his long fingers held a tablet displaying images of the first venue. "I've arranged for us to see the Bellflower first," she explained, pointing to the elegant garden venue on his screen. "It has the romantic atmosphere Vanessa mentioned, with beautiful lighting options for evening." Yates studied the images with a critical eye. "The outdoor space looks promising." "What about contingency plans for weather?" "They have a gorgeous conservatory that can be arranged with minimal notice," Harper replied, pleased she had anticipated his question. As they arrived at the venue, Harper watched Yates's face carefully for reactions. The Bellflower was a historical mansion with meticulously maintained gardens, the kind of place that inspired hushed voices and appreciative glances. The venue coordinator greeted them warmly, leading them through the various spaces. "The main dining area can seat 70 comfortably," the coordinator explained, "and the garden pathways can be lined with lanterns for a magical entrance experience." Harper noticed how Yates took everything in, asking detailed questions about sound systems, staff capabilities, and security measures. He clearly approached the venue inspection as he would a business acquisition, leaving no detail unexamined. "What do you think?" Harper asked as they walked through the garden archway, a spot she had envisioned for photographs. Yates looked around thoughtfully. "It's beautiful, but I'm not sure if it's quite right for Marcus and Vanessa." Harper felt a flash of disappointment. She had been certain this venue would be perfect. "May I ask why?" "It feels a bit expected," he replied. "Marcus and Vanessa aren't conventional people. Their relationship has always been about adventure and discovery." Harper nodded slowly, recalibrating her understanding of the couple. "Then let's continue to the next option. It might be more fitting." The second venue was a converted industrial space with exposed brick walls, massive windows, and a more modern aesthetic. As they walked through, Harper could see Yates's interest growing. "This has potential," he said, examining the large open space. "More character than I expected." Harper smiled, pointing toward a staircase. "Wait until you see the rooftop terrace." When they emerged onto the rooftop with its stunning city views and space for both a ceremony and reception, Harper knew she'd made an impression. Yates walked the perimeter, hands clasped behind his back, nodding appreciatively. "This feels more like them," he admitted. "Contemporary, unexpected, but still elegant." "We could transform this space completely," Harper explained excitedly. String lights overhead, living greenery installations to soften the urban elements, custom projection mapping on that brick wall to tell their story. As she described her vision, Yates watched her with undisguised interest, a slight smile playing at his lips. "You're quite passionate about this." Harper felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. "I believe events should reflect the people they celebrate. Generic parties are forgettable personalized experiences are what people carry with them." "I couldn't agree more," Yates said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. There was a moment of silence between them, charged with something Harper couldn't quite name. She cleared her throat and looked away first. "Shall we check the indoor spaces again before heading to our final option?" The third venue was a boutique hotel with a glass-enclosed ballroom that Harper had initially thought might be too conservative, but now she was reconsidering its potential. As they toured the space, however, she could tell Yates's mind was already made up. "The industrial venue is the clear choice," he said as they returned to the car, "but I'd like Marcus and Vanessa to see it before making a final decision." "Of course," Harper agreed. "I can arrange that for later this week." "Excellent." Yates checked his watch. "It's nearly 2. Have you had lunch?" Harper shook her head, suddenly realizing she was hungry. "Not yet." "Neither have I. Would you join me? There's a restaurant nearby I think you might enjoy." Harper hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." The restaurant turned out to be an exclusive spot that Harper had read about but never visited, the kind of place with no visible menu and a chef who created personalized courses based on patron preferences. As they were seated at a prime table overlooking the water, Harper couldn't help but notice the deferential treatment Yates received. "You must come here often," she observed as the sommelier approached with wine suggestions without being asked. Yates shrugged slightly. "The chef is an old friend. We went to boarding school together." "Boarding school," Harper repeated with a small smile. "That explains a few things." Yates raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" "The way you carry yourself. That particular brand of confidence that comes from growing up with certain advantages." Instead of being offended, Yates looked amused. "And what about you, Harper Anderson? What shaped your particular brand of confidence?" Harper took a sip of the water that had been placed before her. "Growing up with parents who owned a small hardware store in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business, you learn to be self-reliant when your family's livelihood depends on community goodwill." "That sounds challenging in its own way," Yates said thoughtfully. "It was," Harper admitted. "But it taught me to work hard and never take anything for granted." She paused. "Now your turn. Tell me something about yourself that isn't in the business magazines." Yates seemed surprised by her directness, but after a moment his expression softened. "I collect vintage maps. The older and more inaccurate, the better." "Really?" Harper hadn't expected that. "Why maps?" "They represent how our understanding of the world evolves," he explained, a genuine enthusiasm entering his voice. "What was once considered fact, sea monsters in the Atlantic, California, as an island eventually gives way to new knowledge. I find that humbling." Their conversation flowed surprisingly easily after that, moving from interests to travels to humorous stories from their pasts. Harper found herself laughing at Yates's dry wit, while he seemed genuinely interested in her observations about people and events. By the time dessert arrived, a deconstructed apple tart that the chef insisted they try, Harper realized that hours had passed, and she had completely forgotten this was supposed to be a business lunch. "I should probably get back to work," she said reluctantly. "I have a small birthday party to finalize for tomorrow." Yates nodded, signaling for the check. "Of course, I've taken up too much of your time." "No, not at all," Harper assured him. "This was unexpected but very nice." As they walked back to the car, Harper felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, she enjoyed Yates's company far more than she had anticipated. On the other, she reminded herself that he was essentially her client, and mixing business with pleasure was never wise. "I'll arrange for Marcus and Vanessa to see the venue on Thursday," she said as they reached her apartment building. "Would 7 in the evening work?" "Perfect," Yates replied. Before she could exit the car, he added, "I enjoyed today, Harper. Your perspective is refreshing." Harper smiled, feeling a flutter in her chest at the warmth in his eyes. "Thank you for lunch. I'll see you Thursday." As she watched the car pull away, Harper couldn't ignore the realization that Yates Osborne was far more complex and far more attractive than she had initially assumed. And that could be a problem. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity as Harper managed her other clients while preparing detailed presentations for Marcus and Vanessa. She found herself wondering about Yates more often than she cared to admit, particularly late at night when her defenses were down. Thursday evening arrived quickly, and Harper was at the industrial venue early, ensuring everything was perfectly prepared for the couple's visit. She had arranged for sample table settings, floral displays, and even brought in strategic lighting to showcase how the space could be transformed. When Marcus and Vanessa arrived, Harper was immediately drawn to their genuine warmth. Marcus was tall and friendly with an easy laugh, while Vanessa was artistic and enthusiastic, her eyes lighting up as she took in the space. "Harper, Zach has told us so much about you," Marcus said, giving her a brief hug. "This place looks amazing already." "It's just a sample of what we could create," Harper explained, leading them around the space. "Based on what I've heard about your preferences, I thought this venue offered the perfect balance of elegance and personality." Vanessa clasped her hands together. "I love the brick walls and those windows. Can you imagine this at sunset, Marcus?" As Harper walked them through her vision for the engagement dinner, she noticed that Yates had stayed slightly apart, observing their reactions rather than participating in the discussion. When their eyes occasionally met across the room, he would give her a small, approving nod. "What do you think, Yates?" Marcus eventually asked. "You've been suspiciously quiet." Yates stepped forward. "I think Miss Anderson has captured your essence perfectly. This venue reflects who you both are, unique, creative with hidden depths." His eyes shifted to Harper. "She's quite talented at seeing beyond the obvious." Harper felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Thank you." After touring the entire space, including the rooftop where Harper had arranged for champagne and small bites to be served, the consensus was unanimous. "We love it," Vanessa declared, her arm linked through Marcus's. "Absolutely love it. Harper, you're a genius." "I had some help," Harper admitted, glancing at Yates. "Your best man has excellent insights." As Marcus and Vanessa continued exploring the rooftop, chatting excitedly about possibilities, Yates moved to stand beside Harper. "You've impressed them," he said quietly. "That's not easy to do." "What about you?" Harper asked before she could stop herself. "Are you impressed?" Yates studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes reflecting the string lights overhead. "Increasingly," he finally replied, his voice low enough that only she could hear. The moment was interrupted when Marcus called for Yates to join them at the edge of the rooftop to see a particular view. Harper watched as he walked away, aware of the dangerous territory her thoughts were entering. After the venue visit concluded with contracts signed and deposits arranged, Harper expected to say her goodbyes until their next planning meeting. Instead, Marcus and Vanessa insisted they all go for drinks to celebrate. "We have a reservation at Blue Lounge," Marcus explained. "You have to join us, Harper. We want to get to know the woman who's making our special night happen." Harper hesitated, looking at Yates, who merely raised his eyebrows slightly. "I'd be delighted," she finally said. At the upscale lounge, Harper found herself seated beside Yates in a circular booth, while Marcus and Vanessa regaled them with the story of how they met a chaotic blind date involving a fire alarm, evacuating a restaurant, and ending up sharing street food in the rain. "That's when I knew," Marcus said, looking at Vanessa with undisguised adoration. "Standing there, soaking wet, laughing instead of complaining, I just knew." "You're lucky," Harper said sincerely. "Finding someone who matches your energy like that is rare." "Speaking of finding someone," Vanessa said with a mischievous glint in her eye, "we need to talk about you, Harper. Are you seeing anyone?" Harper nearly choked on her cocktail. "Me? No, not at the moment. My business keeps me quite busy." "Too busy for love," Marcus teased. "That sounds like someone else we know." He nudged Yates, who shot him a warning look. "I'm selective, not avoidant," Yates countered smoothly. "There's a difference." "Selective is one word for it," Marcus laughed. "The man runs a global shipping empire, but can't seem to navigate the waters of romance." Harper watched with fascination as Yates's expression shifted between annoyance and affection for his friend. "Perhaps I simply haven't met anyone worth rearranging my schedule for," he said lightly, though his eyes briefly met Harper's. The evening continued pleasantly, with conversation flowing easily among the four of them. Harper found herself genuinely enjoying Marcus and Vanessa's company, and despite her professional boundaries, she felt herself being drawn into their circle as more than just their event planner. When the night eventually wound down, Marcus and Vanessa departed first, claiming an early morning commitment. That left Harper and Yates standing outside the lounge, the city nightlife buzzing around them. "May I offer you a ride home?" Yates asked. Harper considered declining, knowing it would be the sensible choice, but the thought of extending their time together was too tempting. "Thank you, that would be nice." In the car, a comfortable silence settled between them until Yates spoke. "They're good people, aren't they?" "The best," Harper agreed. "Their happiness is contagious." Yates nodded. "Marcus deserves it. He's been there for me through everything: my father's death, taking over the company, the expansion into Asia that nearly bankrupted us before succeeding." He paused. "Not many people know about that last part." Harper felt touched by his confidence. "Your friendship seems special." "It is," Yates confirmed, "which is why this engagement dinner matters so much to me." As they pulled up to Harper's building, she turned to him. "I promise to make it perfect, Yates. They deserve that. I know you will." His voice had softened, and in the dim light of the car, his features seemed less severe, more approachable. Harper felt the urge to say something more, to acknowledge whatever was developing between them, but professionalism won out. "Good night, Yates. Thank you for the ride." "Good night, Harper." She could feel his eyes on her as she walked to her building, and only once inside did she allow herself to acknowledge the fluttering in her stomach. This attraction was inconvenient, unprofessional, and potentially complicated, yet undeniably present. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Harper threw herself into planning the engagement dinner, coordinating with vendors, designing custom elements, and meeting regularly with both the couple and Yates to ensure everything aligned with their vision. Each meeting with Yates seemed to deepen their connection. He was exacting in his standards but receptive to her ideas, and Harper found herself looking forward to their interactions more than was strictly professional. 3 weeks before the event, Harper was at the venue overseeing the installation of a custom lighting system when her phone rang. Seeing Yates's name on the screen made her heart beat a little faster. "Hello, Harper, I need a favor," Yates said without preamble. "The florist we selected for the event, I'd like to meet with them again, but I'm completely booked today." Could you join me for dinner tonight to discuss some concerns I have? Harper hesitated, sensing this might not be strictly about florals. What concerns specifically? There was a pause before Yates replied. I think the proposed arrangements might be too traditional for Marcus and Vanessa. I'd value your perspective. We could discuss this over the phone, Harper pointed out. We could, Yates agreed, but I find in-person discussions more productive. 7 o'clock at Terrazza. Terrazza was one of the most romantic restaurants in the city, known for its intimate setting and spectacular views. Definitely not a place one would choose for a purely business discussion. Yates, Harper said carefully, is this a business dinner or something else? Another pause, longer this time. Would it be inappropriate if it were something else? Harper took a deep breath. You're essentially my client. Technically, Marcus and Vanessa are your clients, Yates countered. I'm just involved. Harper couldn't help but smile at his semantics. Very involved. Harper, his voice softened. I've enjoyed working with you these past weeks. Your creativity, your dedication, they're rare qualities. I'd like to know you outside of this project. Harper closed her eyes, knowing she should decline but finding it increasingly difficult to deny the attraction between them. What about after the engagement dinner? She suggested. Once the project is complete, there would be no conflict. That's reasonable, Yates conceded, though she detected disappointment in his tone. Although I should mention that I do have genuine concerns about the floral arrangements. Harper laughed despite herself. Send me your concerns in an email and I'll address them with the florist tomorrow. As you wish. There was a smile in his voice now, though I think you're being overly cautious. One of us has to be, Harper replied. Good night, Yates. After hanging up, Harper leaned against the wall, conflicted. Her attraction to Yates was undeniable, but her professional reputation was at stake. Besides, Yates Osborne lived in a world vastly different from hers, a world of corporate jets, international influence, and generations of wealth. Whatever was developing between them might feel significant now, but she wasn't naive enough to believe it would last beyond this project. The next morning, true to his word, Yates sent a detailed email about the floral arrangements, with legitimate suggestions that Harper had to admit improved the concept. She replied professionally, thanking him for his input and confirming the changes with the florist. What she hadn't expected was the delivery that arrived at her apartment that afternoon, a beautifully packaged atlas from 1832, with a simple note. For your professional consideration, a world much changed, yet fundamentally the same. Harper traced her fingers over the detailed engravings, touched by how perfectly the gift aligned with their earlier conversation about his map collection. It was thoughtful, personal without being romantic, and clearly expensive without being ostentatious. She called him immediately. This is inappropriate, she said when he answered. Is it? Yates replied, his voice frustratingly composed. I thought it was a professional reference material for an event planner who appreciates historical context. Yates, Harper sighed, though she couldn't stop smiling. You know exactly what you're doing. I know that I respect your boundaries, he said more seriously, but I also know what I want, Harper, and when this project is complete, I intend to pursue it properly. His directness left her momentarily speechless. I appreciate your honesty. Then be honest with me, Yates challenged. Are you interested, or am I misreading this entirely? Harper took a deep breath. You're not misreading anything, she admitted, but that doesn't change the complications. Complications can be navigated, Yates replied. That's what I do for a living, find paths through seemingly impossible logistical challenges. Harper laughed softly. Is that how you see me? As a logistical challenge? I see you as the most interesting woman I've met in years. Yates said, his voice lower now. A woman I can't stop thinking about despite my best efforts. Harper felt her resolve weakening. 2 more weeks, she said finally. After the engagement dinner we can reassess. I'll hold you to that, Yates replied, and she could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Now, about those lighting fixtures you proposed for the entrance. Just like that, they were back to business, though the undercurrent of attraction remained, humming beneath every interaction. As the engagement dinner drew closer, Harper found herself working longer hours, determined to make the event flawless not only for Marcus and Vanessa, but also to prove her professional worth to Yates. Despite their agreement to wait, their communication had taken on a more personal tone, with texts and calls extending beyond business matters. One evening, while working late at the venue to oversee the installation of custom drapery, Harper was surprised to find Yates walking through the door, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this," he said, handing her one of the cups. "Zach mentioned you've been here since dawn." Harper accepted the coffee gratefully. "Thank you, and yes, there's still so much to do." Yates looked around at the transformation taking place. "It's coming together beautifully. You should be proud." "I'll be proud when it's perfect," Harper replied, taking a sip of the coffee which was exactly how she liked it. "How did you know my coffee order?" Yates smiled. "I pay attention." The simple statement shouldn't have affected her so much, but it did. In her experience, men rarely notice such details. "Why are you really here, Yates?" Harper asked softly. He considered her question for a moment. "Officially, I wanted to check on the progress." He stepped closer. "Unofficially, I wanted to see you." Harper felt her heartbeat quicken. "We agreed. I know what we agreed," Yates interrupted gently. "And I'm not going to push for more right now, but that doesn't mean I can't find reasons to be in your presence." Harper couldn't help but smile. "You're very persistent." "When I know what I want," Yates confirmed, his gray eyes holding hers. "It's served me well in business." "And in personal matters," Harper challenged. Yates's expression softened. "That remains to be seen." Before Harper could respond, her phone rang the florist with a last-minute question. By the time she finished the call, the moment had passed, and Yates was examining the table arrangements with professional interest. They spent the next hour discussing final details, maintaining a careful distance that belied the tension between them. When Yates finally left, Harper found herself both relieved and disappointed. The night of the engagement dinner arrived with perfect weather-clear skies and a gentle breeze that made the rooftop setting magical as the sun began to set. Harper had been on site since early morning, overseeing every detail from the placement of the custom-made centerpieces to the testing of the sound system. The transformation of the industrial space was stunning. Warm lighting cast a golden glow over the exposed brick, while living green installations softened the urban edges. On the rooftop, string lights created a canopy of stars above the elegantly set tables, and a small stage awaited the jazz quartet that would perform during dinner. As guests began to arrive, Harper stationed herself near the entrance, clipboard in hand, ensuring everything ran smoothly. She wore a deep emerald dress that was professional yet flattering, a small indulgence for an event she had poured her heart into. Marcus and Vanessa arrived looking radiant, their joy palpable as they took in the space. "Harper, this is beyond anything we imagined," Vanessa exclaimed, embracing her warmly. "You've created magic here." "It's perfect," Marcus agreed, his eyes shining with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." Harper felt a surge of professional pride. "I'm so glad you're pleased. Now go enjoy your celebration. Everything is handled." As the couple moved to greet their guests, Harper caught sight of Yates arriving. He looked devastatingly handsome in a perfectly tailored dark suit, his presence commanding attention as he entered the space. Their eyes met across the room, and the slight smile that curved his lips sent warmth spreading through her. Throughout the evening, Harper maintained her professional focus, addressing minor issues as they arose and ensuring the timeline proceeded smoothly. From the corner of her eye, she occasionally caught Yates watching her, his expression appreciative. After dinner was served and the toasts began, Harper finally allowed herself to relax slightly, moving to a quiet corner to observe the proceedings. Marcus's parents spoke movingly about welcoming Vanessa to their family, and Vanessa's sister shared humorous stories that had the guests laughing. Then it was Yates's turn. As he took the microphone, the room quieted, and Harper found herself holding her breath. For those who don't know me, I'm Yates Osborne, Marcus's oldest friend and the lucky man he's chosen to stand beside him on his wedding day, he began, his deep voice carrying easily through the space. I've known Marcus since our first day of college, when he helped me move into the wrong dorm room, entirely a mistake that turned into the most important friendship of my life. Laughter rippled through the audience, and Yates continued with a story about their college adventures that had everyone engaged. But it was when he turned to speak directly to Marcus and Vanessa that his voice took on a deeper emotion. What I've learned from watching you both is that love isn't just about finding someone who completes you, it's about finding the person who challenges you to be better, who sees you clearly and loves you anyway. His eyes briefly found Harper's across the room. It's about recognizing something rare when you find it and having the courage to pursue it, even when the timing seems inconvenient or the path uncertain. Harper felt her heart racing, knowing his words carried a double meaning intended for her. As the guests raised their glasses in a toast, Yates's gaze remained locked with hers for a moment longer than was casual. The remainder of the evening unfolded flawlessly: the couple's first dance, the cutting of the cake, the joyous celebration of friends and family united in happiness. Harper moved through it all with professional efficiency, but her awareness of Yates's presence never diminished. As the event began to wind down and guests started departing, Harper was checking final details with the venue staff when she felt someone behind her. Turning, she found Yates standing there, his expression unreadable. "You've outdone yourself," he said quietly. "Everyone is impressed, especially Marcus and Vanessa." "Thank you," Harper replied, trying to maintain her professional demeanor despite the butterflies in her stomach. "It was a team effort." Yates shook his head slightly. "Don't diminish your achievement. This was your vision, your execution." He paused, then added, "I'd like to talk with you properly when you're finished here." Harper glanced around. Most guests had departed and the staff was handling the initial cleanup. "I should be done in about 30 minutes, she said. Yates nodded. "I'll wait." True to her word, Harper completed her final tasks efficiently, thanking the staff and confirming details for the complete breakdown the following day. When she finally made her way to the rooftop, she found Yates alone, standing at the edge overlooking the city lights, a glass of champagne in his hand. A second glass waited on the small table beside him. "Celebrating a successful event?" Harper asked as she approached. Yates turned, his expression softening as he saw her. "Among other things." He handed her the second glass. "You must be exhausted." Harper accepted the champagne, realizing for the first time how tired she actually was. "It's been a long day," she admitted, "but a good one." "A perfect one," Yates corrected, his eyes never leaving her face. "The event is over, Harper, officially completed and undeniably successful." Harper felt her pulse quicken at his implication. "So it is." "Which means," Yates continued, taking a step closer, "that our agreement has reached its conclusion as well." Harper took a sip of champagne, gathering her courage. "And what happens now?" "Now," Yates said softly, "I ask you properly if you would have dinner with me tomorrow night. Not as a client, not as a friend of a friend, but as a man who has become increasingly captivated by you." Despite having anticipated this moment for weeks, Harper found herself momentarily speechless. The intensity in Yates's eyes, the sincerity in his voice, it was overwhelming. "Harper," Yates prompted when she remained silent. "Yes," she finally said. "I would like that very much." The smile that spread across Yates's face was unlike any expression she had seen from him before, unguarded, genuinely happy. It transformed his features from merely handsome to breathtaking. "I was prepared to be much more persuasive," he admitted. Harper laughed softly. "I've been persuaded for weeks, Yates. I was just being professional." "And now?" he asked, moving closer until barely a breath separated them. "Now I'm off duty," Harper replied, her voice barely above a whisper. When Yates's lips finally met hers, it felt like the culmination of weeks of tension, of careful distance maintained and professional boundaries respected. His kiss was gentle at first, almost questioning, but when Harper responded, sliding her hands up to his shoulders, it deepened into something more urgent. Yates pulled her closer, one hand at her waist, the other cradling her face with surprising tenderness. Harper felt herself melting into his embrace, the exhaustion of the day forgotten in the warmth of his touch. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since our first meeting," he confessed. "Even when you thought I was just some small-time event planner," Harper teased. Yates smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I never thought you were just anything, Harper. From the moment you challenged me about the budget in my office, I knew you were exceptional." Harper laughed softly. "And here I thought you found me irritating." "Intriguing," Yates corrected. "Fascinating, beautiful." His expression grew more serious. "I know we come from different worlds, Harper. I know my life, the company, the responsibilities, the public scrutiny, it's a lot to consider." Harper reached up to touch his face, surprised by her own boldness. "Are you trying to talk me out of dinner already?" Yates caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Never. I'm just acknowledging reality. My life comes with complications." "Life is complicated," Harper replied simply. "What matters is finding someone worth navigating those complications with." Yates's eyes darkened with emotion. "And am I someone worth navigating complications for, Harper Anderson?" Harper considered him for a long moment, this powerful, complex man who had revealed himself to be thoughtful, loyal, and unexpectedly vulnerable. "I think you might be," she finally said, "but I'd like that dinner first to be sure." Yates laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Fair enough." He glanced around the now empty rooftop. "May I take you home? It's late and you must be exhausted." Harper nodded, suddenly aware of the fatigue settling into her bones. "That would be nice." As they descended from the rooftop, Yates kept his hand at the small of her back, a gesture both protective and possessive that sent shivers up Harper's spine. His car was waiting, and as they settled into the back seat, Harper found herself leaning slightly against his shoulder, the events of the day finally catching up with her. "You were magnificent tonight," Yates said softly. "Every detail was perfect." Harper smiled tiredly. "I'm glad it lived up to expectations." "It exceeded them," Yates replied. "Just like you." When they reached Harper's apartment building, Yates insisted on walking her to her door, his hand never leaving hers. At her threshold, he kissed her again, more gently this time but with no less intensity. "Tomorrow night," he reminded her. 7 o'clock. I'll send a car." Harper nodded, too overwhelmed by the events of the evening and the promise of what might come to argue about the car. "Good night, Yates." "Good night, Harper." As she closed the door behind her, Harper leaned against it, touching her fingers to her lips where she could still feel the pressure of his kiss. What had begun as a professional opportunity had evolved into something she had never expected: a connection with a man who challenged and intrigued her in equal measure. Tomorrow would bring its own complications, its own questions about how their disparate worlds might possibly align. But for tonight, Harper was content to simply savor the possibilities that stretched before her, as unexpected and promising as the journey that had brought them together. The next evening, Harper found herself fussing over her appearance more than usual. After trying on and discarding several outfits, she finally settled on a simple burgundy dress that flattered her figure without seeming like she was trying too hard. As promised, Yates's car arrived precisely at 7, but when she opened the passenger door, she was surprised to find Yates himself behind the wheel rather than a chauffeur. "You drive," Harper said teasingly as she slid into the passenger seat of the sleek sports car. Yates raised an eyebrow. "Did you think I was chauffeured everywhere?" "The thought had crossed my mind," Harper admitted. "Only for business," Yates replied with a slight smile. "For personal matters, I prefer to be in control." Something about the way he said it sent a pleasant shiver down Harper's spine. As they pulled away from her building, she noticed they were heading away from the downtown area rather than toward it. "Where are we going?" she asked curiously. "Somewhere different," Yates replied cryptically. "I thought you might appreciate a break from the usual upscale restaurant scene." They drove for about 20 minutes, leaving the city behind and winding along a coastal road that offered stunning views of the ocean. Eventually, they turned onto a private drive that led to what appeared to be a rustic farmhouse nestled among trees, with lights glowing warmly from within. "What is this place?" Harper asked as Yates parked. "A restaurant of sorts," he explained, coming around to open her door. "The chef was a friend of my mother's. She cooks only one seating per night by reservation only in what used to be her family home." Inside, Harper was charmed to discover a converted dining room with just 5 tables, each set with mismatched vintage china and fresh wildflowers. An elderly woman with bright eyes and a warm smile greeted Yates with obvious affection. "Yates, my boy." "It's been too long," she said, embracing him before turning her appraising gaze to Harper. "And who is this lovely young woman?" "Elise, this is Harper Anderson," Yates said, his hand resting lightly on Harper's back. "Harper, this is Elise Morrow, the finest chef you'll never read about in a restaurant guide." Elise laughed. "I'm just an old woman who likes to cook. Come, I've saved your favorite table." She led them to a cozy corner by a window that overlooked a garden illuminated by string lights. As they settled in, Harper noticed there were no menus. "Elise decides what to serve based on what's fresh that day," Yates explained, noticing her confusion. "Trust me, you won't be disappointed." Over the next 2 hours, they were treated to a parade of exquisite dishes, each one simple in concept, but prepared with such care and skill that Harper found herself closing her eyes to savor each bite. Yates watched her reactions with obvious pleasure, clearly enjoying her delight. Between courses, their conversation flowed easily from topic to topic. Yates told her about growing up as the heir apparent to his father's company, the weight of expectations, and his eventual realization that he genuinely loved the logistics business for its own sake. "It's about connecting the world," he explained, his eyes animated. "Making sure that a medicine developed in Switzerland can reach a patient in Senegal, or that a small artisan in Peru can sell their crafts globally. It's complex, challenging, and ultimately meaningful." Harper found herself captivated by his passion. "I never thought of shipping that way," she admitted. "It sounds almost romantic when you describe it." Yates laughed. "Don't let my board of directors hear you say that. They prefer strategic and profit-generating. And what about you?" he asked as they lingered over dessert, a perfect crème brûlée. "How did a small-town hardware store daughter end up planning elite events?" Harper smiled, surprised he remembered that detail from their earlier conversation. "Like I mentioned before, I worked in corporate consulting after college. The pay was good, the prestige was there, but I was miserable. Then my sister got engaged and their planner quit 2 months before the wedding." "And you stepped in," Yates guessed. Harper nodded. "Out of desperation more than anything else. But I discovered I loved it, the creativity, the logistics, the meaningful moments I was helping to create." She laughed softly. "My parents were horrified when I quit my sensible job to start planning parties." "But they support you now?" Yates asked. "They've come around," Harper said. "Especially since I started turning a profit. My father's a businessman at heart, after all. He just worries about security." "A reasonable concern," Yates said thoughtfully. "The event industry can be volatile." "Like any small business," Harper acknowledged. "But I'd rather take risks doing what I love than play it safe being miserable." Yates's expression softened as he studied her. "That's what drew me to you initially, you know. That fearless authenticity. It's rare in my world." The intimacy of his tone made Harper's heart race. "And what else drew you?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness. Yates reached across the table to take her hand. "Your intelligence, your creativity, the way you stand your ground even when intimidated." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "And if I'm being completely honest, the way you looked that first day in my office, like you were determined to conquer the world, one event at a time." Harper laughed softly. "I was terrified that day. I thought you were judging every word I said." "I was," Yates admitted with a smile. "But I was also thinking about how your eyes light up when you're passionate about an idea. They're doing it right now." Harper felt her cheeks warm under his intense gaze. Before she could respond, Elise appeared with a bottle of dessert wine. "On the house," she announced, pouring them each a small glass. "It's not often my Yates brings a date here." After Elise departed with a knowing smile, Harper raised an eyebrow. "Not often." "Never actually," Yates admitted. "This place is special to me. My mother used to bring me here when I was a child." The significance of his choice wasn't lost on Harper. "Thank you for sharing it with me." As the evening progressed, Harper found herself increasingly drawn to this complex man, who seemed to contain multitudes: the hard-driving CEO, the loyal friend, the thoughtful conversationalist who listened as intently as he spoke. When they finally left, the night air had turned cool, and Yates wrapped his jacket around her shoulders without comment. The gesture was so naturally protective that Harper felt a flutter in her chest. "Would you like to walk for a bit?" he asked, indicating a path that appeared to lead toward the ocean. "The view from the bluff is spectacular at night." Harper nodded, slipping her hand into his as they strolled along the moonlit path. The simple contact sent electricity up her arm. When they reached the bluff, the sight took Harper's breath away, the vast ocean stretching before them, moonlight creating a silver path across the water, stars scattered above like diamonds. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yes," Yates replied, though when she turned to look at him, she found him watching her rather than the view. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up to touch her cheek. "Harper, I should warn you, I'm not looking for something casual. That's not who I am." The directness of his statement surprised her. "What are you looking for, then?" "Someone to build something real with," he replied without hesitation. "I've dated women who wanted the lifestyle, the status, the connections. I'm not interested in that anymore." Harper studied his face in the moonlight, seeing the vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. "And you think I might be that someone?" "I think you could be," Yates said carefully. "I know it's early, ridiculously early to be having this conversation. But I don't want to waste your time or mine if we're looking for different things." Harper considered his words, appreciating his honesty even as it terrified her. "I'm not looking for casual either," she finally said. "But I'm also not looking to be anyone's trophy or accessory. My work matters to me, Yates. My independence matters." "I would never ask you to give those up," he said immediately. "Your passion, your drive, they are part of why I'm drawn to you." Harper took a deep breath, deciding to match his honesty with her own. "There's also the reality that we come from very different worlds. Your life involves board meetings and global decisions. Mine involves flower arrangements and seating charts. Both involve creating meaningful connections," Yates pointed out, stepping closer. "Both require intelligence, creativity, and vision." His hand settled at her waist. "I'm not concerned about our different backgrounds, Harper. I'm interested in our shared future if you're willing to explore that possibility." Harper felt herself trembling slightly, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment and her own feelings. "I am," she whispered, "but I'm also scared." Instead of responding with words, Yates drew her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both gentle and urgent. Harper melted against him, her arms winding around his neck as she returned his kiss with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "We'll take it one day at a time," he promised. "No pressure, no rushing." Harper smiled, her heart full. "I'd like that." The drive back to her apartment was filled with a comfortable silence, their hands linked on the center console. When they arrived, Yates walked her to her door, kissing her goodnight with a sweetness that made her toes curl. "When can I see you again?" he asked, reluctance evident in his voice as he prepared to leave. "I'm free on Friday," Harper replied, equally reluctant to end their evening. Yates smiled. "Friday it is. I'll call you tomorrow." As Harper watched him walk away, she felt a sense of both excitement and trepidation. She was starting something significant with a man whose life was vastly different from her own, a man whose very presence made her pulse race and her mind spin with possibilities. It should have terrified her more than it did. Instead, she found herself smiling as she closed her door, already looking forward to their next encounter. Over the following weeks, Harper and Yates settled into a relationship that progressed with surprising ease. Despite their busy schedules, they made time for each other, sometimes elaborate dates planned by Yates, other times simple evenings at Harper's apartment where they cooked together and talked for hours. Harper discovered layers to Yates that contradicted her initial impression of the stern CEO. He was thoughtful and attentive, remembering small details she mentioned and surprising her with gestures that showed he was truly listening. When she casually mentioned missing her grandmother's apple pie recipe, he somehow tracked down a similar recipe from a bakery in her hometown. When she complained about a difficult client, he offered practical advice without trying to solve the problem for her. For his part, Yates seemed to find in Harper a partner who challenged him intellectually while providing an emotional connection he'd been missing. With her, he could set aside the weight of his corporate responsibilities and simply be himself, sometimes serious and analytical, other times surprisingly playful and relaxed. Their different backgrounds occasionally created moments of adjustment. The first time Yates casually suggested flying to New York for dinner, "Because there's a new restaurant I think you'd love." Harper had to explain that spontaneous cross-country trips weren't part of her normal reality. Conversely, when Harper wanted to take the bus downtown to save on parking for a concert, Yates looked genuinely perplexed. "These are good problems to have." Harper laughed after one such misunderstanding. "And I appreciate that you're trying to understand my perspective." "I want to understand everything about you," Yates replied, his sincerity making her heart swell. 6 weeks into their relationship, Harper was preparing for a major corporate event, her largest since the engagement dinner, when disaster struck. Her primary assistant called in sick, followed by a notification that the venue had experienced water damage and needed to be changed with less than 48 hours' notice. Panicking, Harper called every contact she had, trying to find both a replacement venue and additional help. By midnight, exhausted and stressed, she finally called Yates, even though she knew he was in the middle of negotiating a major international shipping contract. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said when he answered, her voice trembling slightly. "I know you're busy, but I'm having a crisis with this event, and I just needed to hear your voice." "Where are you?" Yates asked immediately. "At my apartment, trying to solve an impossible venue problem," Harper replied, rubbing her temples. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Yates said decisively. "No, Yates, you don't need to 20 minutes, he repeated firmly, then hung up. True to his word, Yates arrived at her door exactly 20 minutes later, carrying takeout food and wearing a determined expression. Without preamble, he set the food down, kissed her briefly, and asked, "What exactly is the problem?" As Harper explained the situation, Yates listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Harper asked. "Solving the venue problem," Yates replied matter-of-factly. "We own a building downtown with an empty top floor that was being renovated for office space. It has spectacular views and could easily accommodate your event." Harper stared at him. "You can't just requisition a floor of a building." Yates raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I can. It's my company." He was already dialing. "Charles, Yates Osborne, I need the 30th floor of the Meridian building made available for an event on Thursday." He paused, listening. "Yes, I'm aware it's under construction." "Halt the work for 3 days and have it cleaned properly." Harper watched in astonishment as Yates proceeded to make several more calls, efficiently arranging for the space to be prepared and necessary permits expedited. Within an hour, the venue problem was solved. "As for your staffing issue," he said after hanging up his final call, "I've arranged for 3 experienced event staff from the Horizon Hotel to assist you. They'll report to you at 9 tomorrow morning." Harper felt tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." Yates smiled gently. "You don't need to say anything. This is what partners do, they help each other." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Now eat something before you collapse." As they shared the now cold takeout, Harper realized something significant had shifted between them. Yates had seen her at her most vulnerable, stressed, overwhelmed, on the verge of professional disaster, and instead of judging her or offering platitudes, he had simply stepped in to help, using his resources without making her feel indebted. "Thank you," she said softly as they finished eating. "Not just for solving the problems, but for treating them as important. Some people might have dismissed an event crisis as trivial compared to international business dealings." Yates took her hand. "Your work matters, Harper. It matters to you, so it matters to me." He paused, his expression becoming more serious. "That's how I feel about everything in your life." The weight of his words hung between them, charged with meaning. Harper felt her heart racing as she recognized what he was really saying. "Yates," she began, but he shook his head. "You don't need to say anything right now," he assured her. "I know it's still early. I just want you to know where I stand." He kissed her gently. "Now let's figure out the rest of your event logistics." They worked together late into the night. Harper marveling at how Yates's organizational skills transferred seamlessly to event planning. By the time they finally went to bed, exhausted but satisfied, the crisis had been averted and the event was back on track. As Harper drifted to sleep in Yates's arms, she realized with startling clarity that she was falling in love with him, perhaps had been falling since that first meeting in his office. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, it felt like coming home. The corporate event was a resounding success, with clients raving about the unique venue and flawless execution. Harper's business reputation soared as a result, bringing in a flood of new inquiries and bookings. She knew she had Yates to thank for much of that success, though he modestly deflected her gratitude. 2 months into their relationship, Yates invited Harper to join him at a charity gala, their first official public appearance together in his corporate world. Harper spent days anxiously preparing, wanting to fit seamlessly into this aspect of his life. The evening of the gala, Yates arrived to pick her up, his appreciation evident as he took in her elegant gold gown. "You look breathtaking," he said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Thank you," Harper replied, smoothing her dress nervously. "I want to make a good impression." Yates took her hands in his. "You will. Just be yourself. That's who I'm proud to have on my arm tonight." The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, with attendees representing the upper echelon of business and society. As they entered, Harper was acutely aware of the curious glances directed their way. "People are staring," she whispered to Yates. "Because you're stunning," he replied simply. "And because they're wondering who captured the attention of the notoriously selective Yates Osborne." Throughout the evening, Yates kept Harper close, introducing her to colleagues and associates with obvious pride. Most were welcoming, though Harper detected occasional undercurrents of assessment from some of the women, particularly those who clearly had their own history with Yates. During a momentary lull, while Yates was speaking with a business associate, Harper found herself cornered by a sleek blonde woman whose smile didn't reach her eyes. "So you're the event planner," the woman said, her tone making the profession sound decidedly unimpressive. "How interesting." Harper maintained her composure. "And you are Clarissa Whitfield. Yates and I have known each other for years." The implication in her tone was clear. "Our families have adjacent summer homes in the Hamptons." "How nice," Harper replied neutrally. Clarissa sipped her champagne. "Yates has always had diverse tastes in companionship, though he typically returns to more appropriate choices eventually." Before Harper could formulate a response that wouldn't involve throwing her drink in the woman's face, she felt Yates's hand at the small of her back. "Clarissa," he said, his tone coolly polite, "I see you've met Harper. We were having a fascinating chat about temporary diversions," Clarissa replied with a pointed smile. Yates's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Then allow me to clarify something. Harper is not a diversion. She's the woman I'm in love with." Harper's breath caught at his unexpected declaration. Clarissa's smile faltered as she registered Yates's serious expression. "Well," she said after an uncomfortable pause, "how lovely for you both." With that, she excused herself and disappeared into the crowd. Harper turned to Yates, her heart pounding. "You didn't need to say that." "I didn't say it for her benefit," Yates replied, his eyes holding hers. "I said it because it's true. I love you, Harper. I've been waiting for the right moment to tell you, but perhaps there is no perfect moment, only perfect certainty." Harper felt tears threatening to spill. "Yates, you don't need to say anything back," he assured her quickly. "I just want you to know where I stand." Harper reached up to touch his face. "I love you too," she said simply, the words feeling right as they left her lips. I think I've been falling in love with you since you showed up at my door with takeout food and solutions when my event was falling apart." The smile that spread across Yates's face was radiant. Without caring about their very public setting, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, earning a few whispers and glances from nearby guests. "Let them talk," he murmured against her lips when they finally broke apart. "Nothing matters except us." The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of happiness for Harper. The acknowledgement of their feelings seemed to have removed the last barrier between them, allowing a new level of comfort and connection. As they drove home from the gala, Yates reached across to take Harper's hand. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. Harper looked at him in surprise. "That's a big step." "I know," Yates acknowledged, "but I've never been more certain of anything. We practically live together already, splitting time between our places. I want to wake up with you every morning, Harper. I want to build a life with you." Harper considered his words carefully. It was true that they spent most nights together already, and the idea of officially sharing a home with Yates filled her with warmth. Yet she also valued her independence, the apartment she had worked hard to afford, the space that reflected her own tastes and achievements. "What about my place?" she asked. "I'm not ready to give it up entirely. Keep it as your office," Yates suggested. "You've mentioned wanting a proper workspace for your business. This way, you maintain your independence while we also create something together." Harper smiled at his thoughtfulness. "You've really considered this." "I consider everything that involves you," Yates replied simply. "Then yes," Harper decided, "I'll move in with you." Yates's smile was worth any lingering doubts she might have had. As they continued their drive, Harper realized how far they had come from that first meeting in his office, from professional acquaintances to reluctant collaborators to partners, in every sense of the word. The following weeks were a whirlwind of logistics, as Harper gradually moved her belongings into Yates's penthouse apartment, while converting her own place into a proper office for Anderson events. The transition was smoother than she had anticipated, with Yates making space for her possessions and preferences without hesitation. "This feels right," Harper said one evening as they sat on the balcony, watching the sunset over the city. "Us, together like this." Yates pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It does, though I keep thinking about ways to make it even more right." Harper looked up at him questioningly, but Yates merely smiled, a secretive glint in his eyes. "All in good time," he said cryptically. Life settled into a new rhythm, busy mornings as they each prepared for their respective work days, texts and calls throughout the day, evenings together when their schedules aligned. Harper's business continued to flourish, with referrals from the successful corporate event bringing in high-profile clients. Yates tackled a major expansion into Asian markets, sometimes working late but always making time for Harper. They weren't without challenges. Their different backgrounds occasionally created misunderstandings, and their strong personalities sometimes led to heated disagreements. But they always found their way back to each other, their communication growing stronger with each resolved conflict. 3 months after moving in together, Yates surprised Harper with news that Marcus and Vanessa had set their wedding date for the following spring. "They want you to plan it, of course," Yates said as they prepared dinner together in their kitchen. "If you're interested." Harper smiled. "I'd love to. Their engagement dinner was what brought us together after all." Yates nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It was the beginning of everything important." He paused, seeming unusually hesitant. "Speaking of beginnings, I have something planned for this weekend. Keep Saturday free." Harper raised an eyebrow. "That sounds mysterious." Yates merely smiled. "Trust me." Saturday dawned clear and beautiful. Yates was uncharacteristically secretive about their plans, asking Harper only to dress casually and comfortably. When they left the apartment, Harper was surprised to find them heading toward the private airfield where Osborne International kept its corporate jets. "Are we going somewhere?" she asked, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Just a short trip," Yates replied with a smile. "Somewhere special." The somewhere special turned out to be a secluded beach house on a private stretch of coastline about an hour's flight away. As they approached from the air, Harper gasped at the beauty of the setting: pristine sand, crystal clear water, and lush greenery surrounding a modern yet warm-looking structure. "What is this place?" she asked as they landed. "My personal retreat," Yates explained. "I bought it 5 years ago when I realized I needed somewhere to escape occasionally. Very few people know about it." The house was even more beautiful up close, spacious and airy, with floor-to-ceiling windows that blurred the line between indoors and outdoors. Every room offered spectacular ocean views, and the furnishings were comfortable rather than ostentatious. "This is incredible," Harper said as Yates gave her a tour. "So different from your city apartment." "That's by design," Yates replied. "This is where I come to be myself, completely no corporate responsibilities, no social expectations." He took her hand. "You're the only woman I've ever brought here." The significance of that statement wasn't lost on Harper. This place represented Yates's true self, and by bringing her here, he was sharing a part of himself that he kept fiercely private. They spent the day exploring the property, walking along the private beach, swimming in the clear water, and eventually watching the sunset from the wide deck. As twilight descended, Yates suggested they dress for dinner. "I thought we'd eat on the beach," he said. "If that appeals to you." When Harper emerged from changing, she found Yates waiting for her, looking handsome in linen pants and a crisp white shirt. He led her down to the beach, where she discovered a table had been set up on the sand, surrounded by lanterns that cast a golden glow in the gathering darkness. A private chef nodded respectfully from a discreet distance. "This is magical," Harper breathed as Yates held her chair. Dinner was exquisite fresh seafood and local produce prepared simply but perfectly, accompanied by fine wine. As they finished their meal, with stars appearing overhead and the sound of waves providing a gentle soundtrack, Yates reached across the table to take her hand. "Harper," he began, his voice unusually solemn, "when I first met you in my office, I had no idea how completely you would change my life. You've brought joy, challenge, and meaning to days that were once defined only by work and obligation." Harper felt her heart begin to race as Yates stood and moved to her side, still holding her hand. "I've achieved everything I thought I wanted professionally," he continued, "but until you, I didn't realize what I was missing personally." To Harper's astonishment, Yates lowered himself to one knee on the sand before her. "You've shown me what real partnership looks like: supporting without smothering, challenging without criticizing, loving without conditions." From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a stunning ring, a brilliant diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires that caught the lantern light. "Harper Anderson," Yates said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I love you more than I thought possible. Will you marry me?" Harper felt tears spilling down her cheeks as joy overwhelmed her. This man, who had entered her life as an intimidating client, had become the center of her world, her partner, her confidant, her love. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly, "Yes, Yates, I will marry you." Yates slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to pull her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally broke apart, both smiling through tears, Yates pressed his forehead to hers. "You've made me the happiest man alive," he said softly. Later that night, as they lay together in the master bedroom, listening to the waves crash against the shore, Harper held up her hand, admiring how the ring caught the moonlight streaming through the windows. "It's beautiful," she said. "How did you know my taste so perfectly?" Yates smiled, propping himself up on one elbow to look at her. "I pay attention to everything about you, remember, though I did get some help from your sister." Harper looked at him in surprise. "You spoke to Haley," Yates nodded. "I called your parents first, actually, to ask for their blessing." Harper felt a fresh wave of emotion. "You did that, even though it's old-fashioned." "I did it because I know family is important to you," Yates replied simply, "and I wanted them to know how serious I am about spending my life with you." Harper reached up to touch his face. "I love you for that. For understanding what matters to me. I plan to spend a lifetime understanding you better every day," Yates promised, gathering her close. As Harper drifted toward sleep in the arms of her fiancé, she marveled at the journey that had brought them together from a professional engagement to a lifelong commitment. What had begun as a simple event planning job had evolved into the greatest love story of her life. 2 years later, Harper stood at the entrance of the industrial venue where Marcus and Vanessa's engagement dinner had been held, the place where her relationship with Yates had truly begun. Now transformed once again, this time for a 5th anniversary celebration for the happily married couple. Harper smiled as she watched the guests mingling, her hand absently touching her slightly rounded belly. At 4 months pregnant, she was just beginning to show, though the flowing dress she wore partially concealed her changing figure. They hadn't announced the pregnancy widely yet, preferring to keep the news intimate for a while longer. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Mrs. Osborne?" A familiar voice murmured in her ear as strong arms encircled her from behind. Harper leaned back against her husband's chest. "Perfect as always. Though I can't take full credit, my team executed most of it while I supervised." Yates pressed a kiss to her temple. "A wise approach in your condition, though I noticed you rearranging those centerpieces yourself earlier." Harper laughed. "Old habits. Besides, I feel wonderful." "Nevertheless," Yates said, his protective instincts evident in his tone, "perhaps we should find you a seat for a while." Before Harper could respond, Marcus appeared before them, champagne in hand and a broad smile on his face. "There you are. The guests of honor after the actual guests of honor," he teased. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years since that engagement dinner that brought you two together." 5 years, one wedding and a baby on the way," Harper agreed with a smile. "Still the best event I ever coordinated," she added, leaning into Yates's embrace. "And the most important business meeting I ever attended," Yates replied, his arms tightening around her. As they made their way through the celebration, greeting friends and accepting congratulations on their expected addition, Harper reflected on the unexpected journey that had led her here to a life filled with love, purpose, and partnership with a man who had once seemed utterly unattainable. What had begun as a professional opportunity had blossomed into everything she could have wished for: a thriving business, a loving husband, and now a growing family. All because she had accepted an email request to coordinate an engagement dinner, not knowing the client's best man would change her life forever. "What are you thinking about?" Yates asked as they shared a quiet moment on the rooftop where they had first kissed. Harper smiled up at him. "About beginnings, and how the best ones often come disguised as ordinary days." Yates nodded in understanding, his hand finding hers. "The day you walked into my office was the beginning of everything that truly matters." As the city lights twinkled around them and the celebration continued below, Harper knew with absolute certainty that some journeys, especially those of the heart, were worth every challenge, every uncertainty, and every moment of courage it took to embrace them. And this journey, their journey, was just beginning.